Elle Holmes had to have known that she had anorexia, and at just 15 years old, she took her own life after pressures to be thinner and prettier. Anorexia nervosa is an eating disorder most commonly found in young adults going through puberty. All eating disorders remain relatively rare, and while anorexia only affects about 0.5% of women and 0.1% of men, it remains the most deadly of all psychiatric disorders. Anorexia nervosa has a 5 to 10% death rate within 10 years of developing the symptoms and an 18 to 20% death rate within 20 years. It is so prevalent in the fashion industry that models are now being airbrushed to add curves. Eating disorders in adolescence are strongly predicted by the earlier presence of depression, bipolar disorder, and anxiety. Elle had to have noticed her physical symptoms of anorexia, of extreme weight loss, insomnia, dizziness or fainting, intolerance of cold, dehydration. These had to have given her some direction to the fact that she had this disorder. I wonder if Elle's mom noticed the behavioral symptoms of her anorexia. Did she notice Elle severely restricting food intake through dieting, or fasting, or excessive exercise? Did she see her binging and self-inducing vomiting to get rid of the food, if she ate any at all? Did she notice Elle's preoccupation with food, her refusal to eat, her denial of hunger? Elle was suicidal and she was depressed. And these are all signs and symptoms related to anorexia that if someone had noticed, could have been prevented. Though the most used way for doctors to diagnose anorexia is based on if the patient's weight drops below an 18.5 body mass index, not all those who suffer from the disorder, like Elle, make it to that point before their lives end. Most who suffer from anorexia do not meet the BMI scale to be medically diagnosed until they are far into the deadly zones of the disorder. After Elle's death, her mother found that she had been doing research on her disorder and may have visited websites such as the Mayo Clinic, where the causes of anorexia are described in 3 ways. Biological. Although it is not yet clear which genes are involved, some people, such as Elle, may have a genetic tendency towards perfectionism, sensitivity, and perseverance. Psychological. Young women may have obsessive-compulsive personality traits that make it easier to stick to strict diets and forego food despite being hungry. They may have an extreme drive for perfectionism, which causes them to think that they are never thin enough. And they may have high levels of anxiety and engage in restrictive eating to reduce it. Environmental. Modern Western culture emphasizes thinness. Success and worth are often equated with being thin. Peer pressure may help fuel the desire to be thin, particularly among young girls. These are all similar to the very struggles that Elle faced in her life. Because Elle's family was not aware of her disorder, she never reached the point of hospitalization like so many others with her disorder do. There are 3 categories that must be met to meet the criteria for hospitalization: psychiatric, medical, and medical complications. Psychiatric criteria include suicidal threats, refusal to comply with treatment, poor outpatient treatment response. Medical criteria include loss of muscle mass, sore joints, and the lack of menstrual cycle. Medical complications criteria include the vomiting of blood, any infection whatsoever, abnormally low serum potassium levels. Potassium is extremely important in human functions such as nerve and muscle activity and the proper functioning of the heart. The deterioration of this can, and in most cases will, result in death. If Elle Holmes had been medically diagnosed with anorexia, she may have had the chance to get treatment and could be alive today. There are 3 forms of treatment that every anorexic should have: medical, nutritional counseling, and therapy. Medical treatment would have been a top priority for Elle if malnutrition or starvation had started to break down her body. Her doctor would have treated the medical conditions that had been caused by anorexia, such as osteoporosis, heart problems, or depression. If she didn't need medical treatment, then nutritional counseling would have been the next step of her treatment. A registered dietitian would have helped her take charge of her weight in a healthy way. She would have learned healthy eating patterns and gained a good understanding of nutrition. Therapy would most likely have been the most applicable option for Elle. Talking with a psychologist or mental health professional would have helped her cope with the emotional reasons behind anorexia. Anyone with the symptoms of anorexia should seek help so they don't follow in the same path as Elle unfortunately did. Like Elle and most young women and men going through puberty, I struggled with the pressures of society and fitting the mold that is seen throughout social media and is broadcasted everywhere. I was a dancer and particularly felt the need to be skinny, or else I wouldn't fit in with how I was supposed to look. Because of this, there were times that I hated myself after eating or that I would intentionally skip meals. At 13 years old, I was becoming borderline anorexic when my best friend noticed and saved me from myself. Though Elle never had the chance to have it, I had the support of my family to keep me from falling into the peer pressures of society. When I got into high school, I found out that one of my friends was diagnosed with anorexia. Thinking back on it, I remember that I never saw her eat. She became less socially active, and at one point, she had told me that she was depressed and was cutting herself. It made no sense to me because she had always been small and fit, and she always seemed happy. She sought treatment, but like me, she still struggles with self-analysis today. No girl or boy should ever experience the self-hatred that one feels because of anorexia, and no more lives should be taken because of this disorder. Elle's project. Elle Holmes wrote and recorded the song Mirror Mirror just before she was taken from this earth. She struggled with anorexia and was trying hard to fight it when she lost the battle. After Elle's tragic death, her family started a project to help bring a light to anorexia and help stop it from stripping away the lives of young adults everywhere. Funds are being raised to help have a Grammy Award winner re-record Elle's song to hopefully get it spread across the globe in hope of stifling anorexia. Elle's life may have ended, but her story and the tragedy of the disorder called Anorexia Nervosa has not.